control. Breach in 5, 4, 3.
What's up, guys? I'm Uncle Freedom, coming to you on another glorious and well-deserved day off, and today we're going to knock another step in that Minutemen layout series, and another step specifically on the Minutemen's Marksman's Rifle. And we're going to talk about ammo selection and ammo considerations for a Marksman's Rifle, a DMR, not Sniper Light, not a sniper weapon system, but specifically the DMR. So, if that sounds fun and interesting to you, go ahead and like, subscribe. If you're new here, I'm a ballistics nerd. You might need a notebook. If you're not new here, welcome back. It's a good time. As always, if you're looking to get in touch with me, it's at UncleFreedom213 on Facebook or Instagram, or UncleFreedom213@outlook.com. If you are looking to support the channel, take a look down in the description box. You will find a link to my link tree that will take you to all of the affiliates of the channel, people like Coltac, Dark Angel Medical, Warren. If they support this channel, they're on there. And if you were going to do it anyway and you use those links, it helps the channel. And for that, I thank you. So, the Minutemen Marksman's Rifle. If you don't know what I'm doing right now in this little short, this would be video number 3, considering talking about the Minutemen Marksman and the Minutemen Marksman's Rifle. I'll leave a link to the first one up here somewhere. It's a good time. I did a very similar video series to this in the Minutemen layout series where we talked about the Minutemen's fighting rifle, as well as ammo considerations, bolt-ons, add-ons, things you had to keep in mind. But the Marksman's a little different because it's a very unique job and skill set, and it's a very unique dynamic that exists within that person. They're a member of a squad and a fire team until they're not anymore. So why does ammo matter? Well, ammo always matters. Again, other video. Ammo matters. Like, it's a big freaking deal. Why would, best tool for the job? Ammo is really important, but it is more important when we start getting into the Minutemen Marksman's Rifle, and it's going to get even more important again when we hit sniper weapon systems. As a marksman, we are looking to make low probability shots with the requirement to put down the threat that we are taking the shot at, or accurate enough fire that can slow down or limit the advance of an opposing force. Now, low probability. For those of you that don't know what that means, let's say I was your target and I had a person right here, so all you could see was this eye. Low probability means that when I ask you to do this as a marksman, you're going to go from 200 or 300 yards away and you're going to put that round where it will stop me, but not touch this. So it's a big deal. And ammo makes that possible. Selecting the right ammo for the job makes it possible. Now, with the Minutemen Marksman's Rifle, it's a little bit different because you're a member of a squad. So it's a little bit of a different ballgame. This is not the place where you're going to be carrying around your 6.5 Creedmoor. This is not the game for that. This is a game played completely differently with way different problems, if you will. So what do we need when we talk about the ammo for the Minutemen Marksman's Rifle? Well, we are needing a ballistically efficient projectile with a consistent and temperature stable velocity that we would see that will allow the rifle to group as consistently as possible with solid terminal performance. Seems easy, right? Bullets do that. You fire them, they do stuff. I will tell you, if you've never loaded for precision rifle, it's a fun game. And there are some factory stuff out there that will do it. So when you look at this, let's break it down a little more. So ballistically efficient, what do I mean by that? Well, ballistic coefficient, or the ballistic efficiency, so the ballistic coefficient of a projectile is determined off of the velocity, and you will see it in its shape. A short little stubby round has a terrible ballistic coefficient compared to something that is long and sleek that we will see. So consistently, when we look at this, those higher ballistically coefficient bullets are going to be sleeker, longer. They're also going to buck the wind a lot better, and they're going to fly more efficiently through the air, creating less drag on themselves and not slowing the round down as fast. which does all kinds of things. That affects our drop, that affects time in flight, time on the wind. All this stuff happens because we're using a round that is more effective and efficient at just flying, right? So that's the first problem we have to look at. And then we talk about consistent in temperature stability, stable velocity. Now, for those of you that have no idea, this is going to be a brain warp for you. I could load 10 rounds of ammo in a temperature unstable powder. I could go out to the range at 50 degrees and develop that load and make it very hot at 50 degrees. And it will function flawlessly at 50 degrees. But even at 50 degrees, if I went on a rapid firing schedule and heated my chamber up and then left a round in the chamber to get completely heated up, I would increase the pressure of that round, sometimes enough to break things, blow primers out, render weapons inoperable, causing catastrophic malfunctions, jamming up the trigger system inside of an AR. It is entirely possible to do, and it is a real thing. The other place we see it is just the temperature itself. If I am using a round that is hot at 55 degrees and it has a temperature unstable powder, and the next time I am shooting this same ammo, it's 105 and my gun has been in the sun for 4 hours, I can blow my stuff apart and render it inoperable, losing that capability with one shot. It can absolutely happen. And I know somebody's gonna be like, I don't hand load. How the hell do you figure this stuff out? I'm gonna get you. I got you. Don't worry. Another reason that your consistent velocity is such a big deal when we talk about consistent velocity is if you were making a shot and you had ammunition that could have as much of 100 feet per second extreme spread, and I fired a round and I impacted my target at, let's say, 500 yards or 550 yards. I have impacted exactly what I wanted to hit. And I go to take my follow-up shot, and my follow-up shot is 100 feet per second slower or faster. I can be minutes off sometimes, depending on how that went. I can miss completely just because of consistency in my velocities. Now, your temperature, like I said, can increase or decrease the pressures, in the 50 degree versus 90 degree kind of stuff. I mean, if I develop a hot load at 50 degrees and I go out and shoot it at 90 degrees, I have popped primers doing that in competitions. It just happens. So temperature stable powders are a thing. They do exist. One of the most famous ones ever is Varget. Varget is a rock star. 9 degrees outside, it's got this velocity. 109 degrees outside, I might be 2 feet per second different from my average. It's fantastic stuff. But when we start talking about all of this stuff, being a good shooter is literally the only part of this battle. It's super important, and the gear is also important, but you being adaptable to the situation is even more important. So when we talk about bullet types, if you're unfamiliar with a lot of, I'm not going to deep dive them as hard in this one because I have covered it all. I'll leave it up here, and it's ammo considerations for the Minutemen fighting rifle. So I'll go over some of the normal stuff that we see in precision rifle, long distance rifle, and that DMR role, which is going to be a rifle that is primarily run and is the same caliber as the rest of the rifles in your squad, because again, you are a squad member until you're not. You have to do this role. Some of the most consistent stuff we're going to see is something known as OTM or BTHP, or boat tail hollow point or open tip match. Those are not hollow points. Yes, I know Rob O'Neill said he put 377 grain hollow points through through Osama bin Laden's face. Cool. That's still not a hollow point in the realm of a hollow point like you're thinking. It is, however, a match round that is ultra effective, and I covered that pretty well in that the Minutemen fighting rifle video where I talk about ammo considerations. Just know they are not hollow points. They do not do the same thing. Some common names you'll see for this type of bullet is the Hornady Match Stuff, the Sierra Match King, the OTM Tac from Berger. You will see the 77, 75s, whatever, loaded by AAC. You'll see them loaded by Nozzle. You'll see them loaded by Frontier. The pros of this kind of bullet are they're hyper effectively accurate. They're very, very ballistically efficient. They're very accurate rounds by nature because of the way they're designed and made. Some cons of it, though, they're not a barrier round at all. And they are effective, the way they disrupt tissue is inconsistent. It's not the same every time you do it. Does that make it bad? No, it's just something to be aware of. But currently, when you look at these types of rounds, you're going to see them in 68, 69, 70, 73, 75, 77 grain. Those are big rounds. That's typically what you're going to see this OTM. Yes, there are stuff 50 grain, 55 grain, 52 grain, open tip match rounds. Yes, I'm aware. We don't want those. We are looking for a round that goes further. So bigger bullets apply here. So outside of that, then you're going to hear another thing, and it's known as tipped match king or TMK, or you'll see the ELDM, which is like a tipped Hornady bullet. This is the same kind of open tip match technology, but now instead of having the open tip, we just have a ballistics tip, which does increase your ballistic coefficient. It makes the round more efficient flying through the air. It does not serve a function the same way it would on a super shock tip or a VMAX round. It does not initiate expansion. It just makes the round more ballistically efficient, which can be good, and they perform the same way once they hit media that the normal OTM does. But a con again to that is they are not barrier blind at all. And then we're going to have barrier rounds, common barrier rounds. So now we're looking at like CX rounds, TSX, TTSX, your normal hunting rounds, like your 75 grain hunting rounds, like 73 grain burger bullet that's loaded up by Federal. These are hunting rounds that are designed to take game at extended distances and keep their, and they're hyper ballistically efficient in their design. But also, in addition to those, though, when we start talking about TSX, that's triple shock expanding, or TTSX, it's tipped triple shock expanding. Both of those are Barnes bullets. Now we're talking about 70 grain solid copper bullets that are barrier blind and do function as a normal hollow point, or the CX offerings from Hornady 53, 55, 70 grain. Same deal with those. Those guys are monolithic copper alloy bullets that expand on target. The only thing that we have to keep in mind when we talk about a copper bullet, though, is there is an expansion threshold. Once we get below like 2,300 feet per second, they do not expand the way they intended to or as well. However, they are super reliable through anything that could be in between you and bad guy. And the other perk you get to this is if we look at like a 55 grain copper expanding bullet from Hornady, it is roughly the same length as a 77 grain Match King. So I have a lighter bullet that I can actually push to a higher velocity because it's lighter, but I have the ballistic coefficient of a heavier weight bullet in that OTM range. It's also going to be far tougher. And then something else you will see in this world would be using a VMAX. Now, this goes back to just like I talked about in the Minutemen Battle Rifle series, which is select your ammunition based upon the perceived threat that you expect to engage. If I am only ever going to engage thin skin or like lightly jacketed bad guys, no armor, nothing to get around, no barriers in between me and them, I can elect to run a hyper velocity varmint round like a VMAX, a Varmageddon, an EAT, or something like that. I can choose to do that because I'm going to have devastating terminal performance, and that is an area that a round can be used where maybe your concern is if you were to miss, because misses do happen, we just try to mitigate it as much as possible. If I were to miss and I went through a wall, would I hurt something that doesn't need to be hurt on the other side of the wall? That is where those thin-skinned varmint rounds really come into play. One that I am going to be testing out specifically because I want to know is the 75 grain Saber Black Tip by AAC. That looks like it could be really cool, and I intend to do it. But you can also find them all over the place, 60, 62, 65 grain, Blitz Kings, you name it, they exist. And they do the job very well. All kinds of stuff for that 5.56 platform. So another thing we're going to look at is now you have your Marksman's Rifle. You're going to see three very common twist rates, which twist rate refers to the actual rifling of the barrel. How many inches? So you'll see two numbers, like 1, comma or colon 7, 1 colon 8, 1 colon 9, whatever, right? What we are looking at for that is how many inches it takes the bullet to make a complete rotation inside of your barrel. Standard common practice. Now, when the M16 was invented, when it first came out, and 55 grain was the jam, and it did crazy, crazy awesome stuff, that was a 1 in 12 twist, which means it wasn't a very stable round to begin with when it hit stuff, but that helped it yaw and tumble and do what it did. But then we moved up as we created new rounds, and we had this tracer for the 62 grain version of it that was much longer, so we had to stabilize it. Enter the 1 in 7 twist. And what ended up happening with that? Well, when we put in other bullets, they didn't do as well on soft tissue as they did before because they were hyper stable, right? So quarterback throwing a football, super tight spiral, punches right through things. So the three most common ones we're going to see on an AR platform are 1 and 7, 1 and 8, and 1 and 9. 1 and 7 is a fantastic twist rate for a DMR rifle because even shooting stuff as low, I've shot 40 grain stuff out of a 1 and 7 and never had a problem. But it will stabilize super heavyweight stuff. 1 and 8, I like 1 and 8 though, man. It's a jack of all trades. I can shoot 40 grain Varmageddon, not have many issues, but I can also shoot 77 grain tipped Match Kings. It's awesome. They're great. And then you have 1 and 9s, which you can run into an issue with 1 and 9s because they do not have the twist rate to stabilize the heavier bullets as well as other things. Now, here's a big caveat. And you need to keep this in your head. If you are shooting a 16-inch 1 and 9 twist gun and it doesn't stabilize your bullets, do you think if I shot a 20-inch 1 and 9 gun that it would not stabilize that same bullet? Odds are it's going to stabilize it just fine. That is because I can offset a slower twist rate little bits. Now, I'm not saying like a 1 and 12 can be offset to like a 1 and 7. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if I have a 1 and 9, it's marginal at best with a heavier weight projectile, and I, instead of having a 14.5, I now have a 20 or an 18-inch barrel, I can now stabilize those 77 grain bullets that I couldn't stabilize in the shorter barrel because I'm giving the barrel longer and more twist to stabilize that bullet. So we can get around it. So don't just disregard 1 and 9 because, well, 1 and 9 won't do it. 1 and 9 can absolutely do it with a long enough barrel. So I personally like 1 and 8. I think 1 and 8 is fantastic. 1 and 7 is also good, though you can suffer on the lighter weight bullets. I haven't necessarily, I've seen it before, but it's not with all bullets in that 45, 32 grain range. But it is more prevalent than a 1 and 8. So ammo commonality is the other big part. And I've kind of alluded to this talking about this. Remember, you're a member of a fire team. What is one of the biggest benefits to being a member of a fire team is that you have ammo commonality. And if you go Winchester, he can give you a mag. So if your squad's running 5.56, your Marksman's Rifle should probably be a 5.56 as well. I just went over how we don't use the same ammo for this role, but I'm going to touch on that in a second, why ammo commonality is so important. So you're going to ask yourself realistically about 3 questions when you're going to look for ammo. 3 questions you're going to ask is, what is my projected engagement zone? If you live in an urban environment and you're never, like, you've never even seen anything 300 yards away because there's no way you could see it, your engagement zone isn't very far. And I can get away with running a lighter weight bullet or a shorter barrel. However, if you live where I live, I can see stuff like 2,000 yards away at all times. I have a range I teach at. I can make shots with an AR 1,600 yards. I have the ability to do that. So it behooves me to have a heavier weight bullet that's going to be more ballistically efficient because I'm going to shoot farther away, odds are. The next one is, will I need barrier performance from my rounds? If you are only going to be shooting projected in an environment where any overpenetration could make you suddenly the bad guy, or you're never going to shoot through car windshields because that is not your goal, you do not need barrier performance, but you should still probably prep for it. May not be your primary projectile, but it should definitely be in your toolbox. And third and final is, do I know my adjustment if I should need to use the ammo of another squad member? Ammo commonality. This happens. If you have your load and you're running 20 round mags because you are expected to be prone and you've burned through your stuff and suddenly something is going wrong, do you know the adjustment needed to make to change your zero up for drop so that you can at least figure your drops out for your squad's ammo? That's actually a real thing, and you do need to think about it. So how do we determine if a round is going to be a viable option for our Minutemen Marksman's Rifle? You're in luck. I'm going to break it down. It's going to be great. I've heard this before. I bought great match ammo. I'm good, right? No, you're not. That's not how this works. Just because it says match, firearms are picky. Not all ammo is going to shoot from all guns. It's not going to happen. There are rounds that I adore that will not shoot from some of my rifles. My rifle just doesn't like it. It happens. So just because you bought it doesn't mean it's going to work. You have to go out and verify this stuff. So how do we go out and verify this stuff? So first thing you're really going to have to understand is when you pick out an ammo, understand and know that it is a trial and error. And when you're doing this, you will need access to a minimum of a 100-yard range. You have to have a 100-yard range. So go make friends with a farmer. And preferably, if you can get it, I would say a minimum of 300 yards, because that's going to be important in a second. If you have more range like I do, fantastic. You can do all kinds of stuff. That means you're going to be more effective at what you do because you have actually tested yourself out at distances. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a target from poster board and stickers and a Sharpie. So when we talk about targets, something that people commonly have in their head is something that looks like this, right? Shoot and see 5 spots I could really shoot at on here. Can get cluttered if I miss a wind call or if the zero is kind of drastically different as I'm figuring this out. Groups can get kind of clustered together. These are great for some things, but not for this part. Something like this is though. So this is standard poster board. This is just a piece I cut down for what I'm doing. You'll notice I have X's, and then I have what it was I was shooting, and then the powder charge. This is for a hand loader, but if you were not hand loading, you could have this wrote out to say federal gold, federal GMM 77 grain, right? You could do that so that you can keep track of what you're doing. So create your target from poster board and target dots. It's going to allow you to test multiple different ammos or multiple groups of the same ammo, because we're also going to do that. And then for you to come back and analyze those groups. Is it actually, in fact, hitting a little bit over here? Is there an inconsistent issue when you got to the third group? It started opening up. You might have a heat stringing issue, right? Maybe you need to slow down your fire, or at very minimum, have a plan for when that takes place, knowing where it takes place at. So on our initial test phase, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to go out and we're going to pick 2 boxes of each of the projected ammos that we're going to try when finding our primary load. Let's say you had no plans at all for barrier. So barrier was going to be your auxiliary ammo compared to your standard stuff. And what you were wanting to shoot was an open tip match bullet. So you go out and you buy 68, 69, 70, 73, 75, 77. You come back to your house. You make your target and you set this up. You're going to set your target up so that you have 2 5-shot group spots for that ammo, and then you're going to fire a minimum of 10 rounds over a chronograph. That chronograph data, that first 10-round thing, is going to give you kind of a baseline look at what the consistency is shot to shot for your standard deviation and your extreme spread. You're going to need to make a note of your average velocity, standard deviation, extreme spread. If your numbers are bad, if you have a crazy extreme spread or your standard deviation is like 45, or the ammo just doesn't group, but all of your numbers look pretty good, they're acceptable, but it's not grouping, it is okay at that point to ditch that ammo and move on to a different one instead of like spending more money and trying to make this round work because you like it when your rifle doesn't care for it. You cannot force this square peg into a round hole. If your rifle hates a particular loading, it is not going to suddenly like it if you give it more of it. Stop wasting your money. Change it up. Never be afraid to switch it if it's not working. Try something else and figure out what's going to work best, because we're looking for consistency, not to shoot this specific round because I said it was cool. I don't care if I think it's cool, as long as it's consistent from your gun. So we've done this. We've checked all our ammos. Once we identify our top 2 or 3 loadings that we're going to do, we're going to create a separate target, and we're going to allow for 5 group spots for that ammo. And then 1 10-round group at the end. So 6 group dots for each ammo we've discussed. So you're going to shoot 18 groups. Now, why do we have 5 shots and a 10-shot group? Well, here's the deal. You're going to put your chronograph back on the line again once we get to that 10-shot group, because we're going to compare those numbers of your extreme spread and standard deviation, add them with your old numbers, and that's going to give us a new number with now 20 shots. If you have a magneto speed, I highly recommend running it for all of your groups. That's what I do when I shoot. That's how I get my numbers. So now that we've identified it, we're going to shoot 5 shot groups, because that's going to show us the consistency of that round's ability to group in our rifle over and over and over again. This is where we're going to start to see things like when I got 3 or 4 groups in and the barrel started heating up on me a little bit. I got a little heat in the system. It started stringing a little bit, or maybe my group moved slightly over here. Here's the deal. At 100 yards, it moving a half an inch over here, not a big deal. Now I'm going to tell you we're going to shoot at 500 yards. Well, now that's 2.5 inches the wrong way. Right? What if you missed a wind call? That 2.5 inches could quickly turn into 7 or 10. There's a lot that goes into this, but practice is what you have to do if you want to learn this. Because here's the thing. I didn't just come out here and Google something to give you this info. I have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds downrange over chronographs into targets, shooting for groups and data. Somebody mentioned Johnny's Reloading. Mitch, huge fan of Johnny. I was actually cloning Mark 262 the same time he was when he was releasing videos. I just didn't do a YouTube channel. I didn't have one back then, but I was actually doing it. He was the one that gave me the idea to try Lever Evolution. That was hot. Not a good idea. But yeah, I hugely respect Johnny. I think he makes great stuff. If you're interested in reloading and you want some kind of proof of concept data stuff, go check out Johnny's Reloading Bench. He's a great guy. So now that we've done that with those 2 or 3 loads, we're going to use that method. We're going to look at it to identify the optimal secondary and tertiary options for our rifle. The one that is most consistent, groups the tightest for all those groups. Well, that's our primary ammo, right? We know it. That's our primary ammo. But maybe I have the other one. The numbers are a little worse, but it's almost as good. Well, that's my secondary if I can't find my primary. And then I have a tertiary. And then I'm going to make a note of where my zero should be in relation to all 3 of those. And I'm going to keep that data. That data is going to allow me, if I suddenly have to change to my tertiary option because I didn't bring any more of my primary and that was just a backup in my bag, I know what I have to adjust in my scope to at least get me closer than I would have been otherwise. Ideally, in a perfect world, they're all hitting pretty close to the same, but that is not how it really works. So now that we've selected those ammos, and we're going to do the exact same process for a barrier load. Good news, there's not as many barrier loads. There's not. If you plan on running a thin-skinned varmint load for your main stuff, maybe your secondary load is just the barrier load. You don't have to go through the long-distance stuff, but the process is the same no matter what bullets we're trying to figure out. If we're going to do varmint rounds, light-skinned varmint rounds, we're going to do the same process, but just for the varmint rounds. We're going to do barrier rounds. I recommend a barrier round no matter which one you got because you need to be able to punch through stuff. So if you do your barrier round, you figure out which one's going to work and look the best for you. Great. Now that's awesome. And then you're going to take your squad's primary ammo. Let's say your squad shoots M193. You're going to take that primary ammo and you're going to go out and you're going to shoot 5 shot groups and a 10-shot group. You're going to shoot it over chrono and you're going to make note of where those bullets hit and how your group was affected and what inconsistent pressures and velocities look like when you do it, because they're pretty notorious for it. So now you're going to look at it and you will have a good idea looking at that, like, okay, maybe you get lucky and you've done some research and you found a barrier round that it impacts almost identically to your primary round. That's great. That means you don't have to make any adjustments if you swap. But knowing, hey, when I switch over to this, if I ever have to, I have to come up like half a minute, or I have to come up, a full minute, or I got to come left because it always throws them right when I do this. In my testing, it was always consistently grouping right, not down the middle. Knowing that ahead of time means you don't miss on game day. So now we talked about selecting your ammo, kind of the process. Even I go through these processes. Now we're going to talk about a couple of things that are just a little different, right? They go along with ammo, but they're a little bit special. Okay, first one is be wary that just because a ammo uses a word like match does not make it match. I talk about this in match grade, what does it mean? But here's a great example. Frontier ammo, loaded with Hornady bullets. You'll see it right there. 5.56, 75 grain, BTHP, match. They are correct. That bullet is a match bullet. It's a very consistent bullet. I will tell you, though, that this projectile cartridge does not have a great standard deviation. The extreme spread gets a little bit wonky, and that I can't get the group in one of my DMR guns at less than like 1.4 inches. That gun is capable of half-inch groups, but I cannot make that ammo do it because it's not match. Another one we'll see this with is IMI Razor Core. Yes, that is a Sierra 77 grain Match King. That is a match grade projectile. However, that is not a match grade round. However, if we go look at Barnes, or if we go look at Burger loadings, or Federal's loading in the gold medal match, Hornady, the white and red box says match on it, right? If we go look at those are match projectiles using temperature stable, temperature insensitive powder that are going to run. They've already tested those powder loads to run consistent standard deviations and low extreme spreads, giving you the optimal chance for that to work. So yes, that is an option. There's lots of match rounds out there, just tons of them. Just be aware that things like Frontier, IMI, and AAC as of this point are not match rounds. They use match projectiles, which is good. The bullet's going to fly great. However, it's not going to be consistent because the rest of the package is not match. So after we've selected that cartridge and we've zeroed our firearm for it, now we're going to go out to 300 yards if we have a BDC, and we're going to true that BDC. We could also take a look at this and get our exact drop off of a ballistic calculator, come up on that drop, and we should hit. If we shoot at 300 yards and it's wildly off, we screwed up somewhere. But odds are it's going to take some fine-tune adjustments. In a BDC, you would go in and zero your 300, and then you would go back to your 100 and verify again. You'd be amazed. It's kind of a refinement of your zero process, but you're verifying and truing that bullet drop compensator to your actual zero itself, which is pretty cool. Now, once we've looked at that, now we're going to do engagements. We're going to shoot from 75 to 100 yards to whatever our max engagement is supposed to be. Let's say your max engagement is 600 yards. And then I'm going to shoot 650 or 700 because I need to know what the bullet does a little bit past it, because nobody said people are going to play by the rules you set. So once I've done that, then I'm going to start creating dope for my gun. So when we create dope for a gun, dope is a magical term. Everybody talks about it, but nobody really goes over what dope is. Dope is data on previous engagements. There is a thing. This is my newest one. This is for a new SPR that I built. This is from Storm Tactical. Great folks over there, not an affiliate. I love their stuff, though. This is a data book. Now, a data book, got my stencils in here. Data books are going to have some options. I'm going to have some targets in here. And really where we go at is we start looking at these. Actually, I really like, there's an IPSC one. There we go. So let's say I'm shooting at an IPSC, and I'm shooting at this IPSC at 300 yards. I've got location, my date, the time that I'm shooting this in. You write that down or you don't. The big one here is temperature, though. How hot was it when I was at? How far away was I shooting? How was I shooting? Was I in the prone? Was I, prone supported? What was I doing? How fast was I shooting this at? Was I giving myself 5 to 10 seconds per shot? Was I giving a minute per shot, very slow fire? Was I rapid engagementing this stuff? 3 count between shots, whatever. And then what support did I use? Did I use bipod? Did I use bag? What did I use? So I'm going to take my first shot, and then I'm going to give my elevation and my windage, and I'm going to call my shots when I fire them, which means if I am going to fire that round and it is perfectly center when I break that shot, I'm going to call center on that shot. I should have center impact here. So I make a note, put my little dot right here. 1, this was my elevation there. Then I'm going to do 2. This is going to give me data I can look at that's going to bolster how good my information is for my personal rifle. If you don't have an IPSC, this is another one that I really, really enjoy. This one is just one you draw your own target. So if you just have like a round thing or a square thing, whatever out there, super important. But data books have other stuff in them, which is a round count log, allowing you to keep track. That is very important, because if things start falling apart on your gun, it would probably be good to know why it happened. There's other stuff in here, sniper's observation log. There's range cards in here, mover targets, field sketches, all of that stuff is available in here. Again, I am not sponsored. We even have reticles in here. So we can actually hold off the reticle and make notifications of where it hit. And I keep this in a Battleboards medium scout. Great system, great solution. Storm Tactical, good guys. Triad Tactical is also their company, also good folks. The data book is super important. You don't have to spend the money on a data book, but you definitely need a notebook that you're writing this stuff down in. And to go along with your data book is a ballistic calculator. Lots of options for this. Hornady 4DOF is my favorite. There's Straylock. There's a free version and a paid version. Lapua's got one. There's lots of options out there. Hornady is my absolute favorite. Now, Hornady is going to ask you for some information. What's your ballistic coefficient? What's your velocity? What's your temperature at? Station pressure and your elevation, right? And then you're going to put all that stuff in, and then you're going to tell it what the wind's doing and how far away you want to shoot. And it's going to give you your dope, your come up. That's great. And that's your starting point. So let's say I did it and it said 12 minutes, right? That was my come up. We'll use MOA since that's more common. We'll say 12 minutes, right? 60 inches of drop. Well, I dialed 12 and I hit a little higher than I wanted to. So now I know that at that time and that temperature, the real dope on my rifle wasn't 12 minutes. Maybe, just maybe, it was 11.5. Maybe I was low, and instead of 12, it should have been 13. That is how you learn your dope. You keep track of that over time, and you make a little card and put it on your stock. Or an arm board. I use an arm board for mine most of the time. That is how we make rapid engagements at distances. And I'll go in a little bit in theory when we talk about optics on how you're actually going to use something in conjunction like a range card or a field sketch with your dope and your time before you start making engagements to basically make yourself a machine. So don't worry, that's coming. So something else that we need to do now that we've kind of looked at this, and this is just kind of a bonus tip, anytime we change ammos. So if I can no longer find my primary, secondary, tertiary ammo that I have data for, and I have to go to a different one because that's all I can get, I have to go back and check that zero, right? If I am switching between primary and tertiary ammo permanently, I need to go change my zero to that tertiary ammo. It has to happen. In a good world, before things go terribly wrong, and we're learning all of this stuff, if I buy my ammo, this is a best practice, if you will. If I am shooting 73 grain Hornady ELDM, right? Hornady match, and that's what I'm shooting. And I go out to the range, and I go and keep track of that little stuff inside of your box that says a lot number. So we have like, here's some, this is some 55 grain stuff. See that thing right there? That's lot number. If I get another box of that, it's got a different lot number, I have to verify my dope and I have to verify my zero because nobody said it's going to be exactly the same. It seems like a lot of work, doesn't it? Like, oh crap, and you're talking about changing all this stuff. It sounds like a lot of shooting, and I'm using a bunch of you're right, I am. But we would all agree that the role of a marksman is miss a whole lot less occupation, right? If somebody calls on you and you're tapped, like, I need you to take them out, they're going to kill Billy, right? The day you realize your crap isn't zeroed the right way or that you didn't have good data is not the day you smoke Billy instead of bad dude. Because that's how we learn we screwed this up. It's important to stay on top of your gear. And once you turn this into a habit, it's easy to keep track of. Like, this thing is second nature to me when I go to the range. Like I said, this is a brand new one to go with the new book. You don't have one of these for, one, you do 6 rifles out of it. You have one, you do that rifle out of it, period. So now that we've talked about all of that, there's some useful items that you should probably have. This is going to be your role. And maybe you don't have them all now, but we should look at these items. And this is just for the ammo selection part. We're not even talking about the useful gadgets and gizmos that we're going to have later on. This is just for you designing your ammo and keeping up with your practice and making sure your skills are sharp. There's a few items that are really useful and you should probably own just on this part. You can use them in training. You can use them in practice. You can use them as classes. You can do all of that now while the world still functions as God intended. However, if it suddenly doesn't function as God intended, you're going to be really glad you got this stuff. So useful items for this is a chronograph. Oh, I didn't bring it over here. Anyway, magneto speed is what I use. I like the magneto speed. There are some newer options out there. I believe Garmin has a new one. I haven't gotten that in to test it yet. Lab Radar is another option. Magneto speed is the most grunt proof simplified version I can think of. You mount to rifle, make sure bullet won't strike when it comes out bayonet lug, plug into thing, fire over while shoot groups, and read. Super simple. Magneto speed is great for that. Targets, right? Make your own, get some poster board, get some stickers, make your own stuff, because then you can keep those and they're a reference point as well. Next up, data book, right? This becomes a constant companion when you train and work on your stuff, because now I have the ability to reference my own data and not what the box said. Ballistic calculator on your phone. There is a really, really nice version that goes with like a Kestrel, which will get covered in a later video, but it's applied ballistics. If you do not want to spend the money on that right now, Hornady 4DOF is my go-to. It's a great one. You do not have to use Hornady bullets to use 4DOF. Just saying. Doesn't work that way. Absolutely imperative though. Your ballistic calculator. And next up is going to be a good bag that you can sit your rifle on depending on your situation. If you were shooting in a different thing and not off of a bipod, something like this. This is a cuddle bag from Coltac. This is the little cuddle bag. This thing weighs absolutely nothing. It's awesome. It's also very useful in an operational sense if I find myself shooting from a compromised position. By having this over my shoulder and having this here, I can stabilize my arm on the rifle and not inflect motion with my shit bat winging out here, okay? And beyond important to that is your rear bag. This is awesome. If you have a bipod, you lay your rifle, here's the thing, you don't need that bag to shoot. You can lay your rifle on your rucksack or your DMR's bag or whatever it is, right? We all agree that can happen. But your rear bag, this goes everywhere, man. Rear bags go everywhere. This is the Coltac. This is the Coltac. I told you I'm a fan of these guys, right? Money where my mouth is. I own a lot of Coltac. They are an affiliate of the channel. Remember, follow that link. Great stuff. USA made. It's nice. It's expensive, but it's worth every penny. So this is the whoopee bag. This is my rear bag. This enables me, if I'm prone, I can control elevation on my rifle and stabilize my rifle. If I'm seated, same deal. Rear bags. Don't buy cheap rear bags. Buy good rear bags with good fill in them. All of the new ones from Coltac are Velcroed in, so I can actually go in and adjust the fill as I need to, which is really, really cool. Coltac, they're my people for all bags. When we get to auxiliary equipment, you're going to see more Coltac bags because I have them. So, guys, ammo, determining ammo viability, and picking, and a lot of that information has to be there. I know it's a lot to digest. Trust me, I'm aware. I am going to try to type this up into a thing so that you can kind of have a step-by-step guide. And when I do that, I will leave it in the description box as a PDF for you guys to grab and download as you would need. So I will do that because that is a lot of information for you to have. I can probably do the same deal with some round count sheets and stuff as well. So guys, I am Uncle Freedom. Hope you enjoyed this. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Until next time, I'll see you later.